In a shocking turn of events, what should have been a routine promotional interview on The Late Show last night turned into television history when Ryan Reynolds was escorted off set following a heated exchange with Stephen Colbert. The normally playful banter between host and guest spiraled into a tense confrontation that has left viewers stunned and social media ablaze. This is how a Hollywood friendship crumbled before millions of viewers. The studio lights seemed extra bright at the Ed Sullivan Theater yesterday evening. The audience buzzed with excitement as the show's famous opening sequence played. Stephen Colbert bounded onto the stage with his usual energy, straightening his suit and flashing his trademark smile. The crowd cheered and clapped, unaware of the drama that would soon unfold. "Tonight we have a very special guest," Colbert announced, his voice carrying across the studio. "He's here to talk about his new movie, Deadline Dash, where he plays a time-traveling mailman who needs to deliver a package that could change history. Please welcome Ryan Reynolds." The audience erupted in applause as Ryan Reynolds walked onto the set, waving and smiling. He looked sharp in a navy blue suit, projecting his usual charm and confidence. The two men shook hands, and Reynolds took his seat beside Colbert's desk. "Ryan, it's great to have you back on the show," Colbert said, shuffling some cards on his desk. "Thanks for having me, Stephen." "Always a pleasure," Reynolds replied with his signature grin. For the first few minutes, everything seemed normal. They discussed Reynolds' new movie, sharing a few laughs about the challenges of filming certain scenes. The audience was enjoying the easy rapport between the two entertainers. Then something shifted. Colbert's smile took on an edge that keen observers might have noticed. "So, Ryan, Deadline Dash is your third movie this year," Colbert said, leaning forward. "Some critics are saying you might be overexposing yourself. One reviewer called it the Reynolds fatigue effect. Care to comment on that?" A flicker of surprise crossed Reynolds' face, but he recovered quickly. "Well, I just love what I do. When great scripts come along, it's hard to say no." Right, Colbert nodded, not letting up. "But let's be honest here. Aren't these just the same character over and over? Sarcastic guy says funny things while running from explosions? It's like watching Deadpool with different costumes." The audience's laughter became uncertain. This was sharper than Colbert's usual teasing. Reynolds shifted in his seat. "I think each character I play has their own journey and personality. Sure, I bring my own style, but isn't that what actors do?" "Speaking of style," Colbert continued, ignoring Reynolds' response, "your gin company just got bought out for a pretty penny. Must be nice to make millions selling alcohol while your acting career plateaus." A murmur ran through the audience. This wasn't playful banter anymore. Reynolds' smile remained, but it no longer reached his eyes. "Aviation gin was a passion project," Reynolds said carefully, "and I'm proud of its success. As for my acting career, I feel fortunate to work on projects I believe in." "Come on, Ryan," Colbert pressed, his tone increasingly condescending. "Your wife, Blake Lively, is getting all the critical acclaim these days, while you're making forgettable action flicks. Does that create tension at home?" The studio grew uncomfortably quiet. Reynolds' jaw tightened visibly. "I don't think my marriage is an appropriate topic for this interview," he said evenly, "and I'm incredibly proud of Blake's success." "Just asking what everyone's thinking," Colbert shrugged, turning to wink at the audience, who remained awkwardly silent. "Maybe that's why you're pushing so hard with all these business ventures. Trying to prove something?" Reynolds took a deep breath. "Stephen, I came here to talk about the movie. If you have genuine questions about that, I'm happy to answer them." "Oh, I've got questions," Colbert continued, seemingly oblivious to the tension or perhaps fueling it deliberately. "Like, how do you justify charging people $15 to watch you play the same character for the 10th time? Or why you think your internet persona is still charming and not completely calculated?" The camera caught Reynolds' expression, hardening, though he maintained remarkable composure. "Listen," Reynolds said, his voice level but firm. I understand talk shows need moments, but there's a line between playful ribbing and disrespect, and you're crossing it. Colbert laughed, but it sounded hollow. Oh, come on, you can't take a joke now. What happened to the funny guy who makes fun of everything? Dish it out but can't take it? There's a difference between humor and whatever. This is, Reynolds replied. I've always been respectful when I've come on your show. Respectful? Is that what you call going on every talk show telling the same rehearsed stories? The public persona is getting old, Ryan. We all know it's fake. The audience was completely silent now. A few uncomfortable coughs echoed through the studio. You know what, Stephen? Reynolds said, sitting up straighter. I think we need to take a break. This isn't the conversation I agreed to have. Colbert's eyes narrowed. What's wrong? Hit a nerve? Maybe I'm just saying what other hosts are too afraid to say. I've always been a fan of your show, Reynolds said, his voice calm despite the clear tension. But this isn't about promoting my work or entertaining your audience. This feels personal and, frankly, unprofessional. Unprofessional? Colbert scoffed. What's unprofessional is churning out mediocre content and expecting everyone to praise you for it. Your last 3 movies have the exact same plot, just with different wigs. Reynolds set his water glass down with a controlled movement. I think we're done here. The show's producer could be seen frantically gesturing from the side of the stage. The red light on the main camera blinked steadily, capturing everything as millions watched at home. What's the matter? The guy who makes jokes about everyone. Else suddenly can't handle being the punchline, Colbert pressed, ignoring the signals from his team. Reynolds stood up, removing his microphone. I respect your show and your audience too much to continue this. Thank you for having me, but I think it's best if I leave now. As Reynolds turned to walk off stage, Colbert called after him. Walking away? I guess that's easier than admitting I'm right. The audience gasped as 2 security guards appeared, apparently summoned by producers to escort Reynolds off the set. But why were they approaching Reynolds, who was leaving calmly and with dignity? Something wasn't adding up. The show cut abruptly to commercial, but not before home viewers caught a glimpse of chaos erupting on the set. What exactly happened? Next would become the subject of intense speculation across social media platforms within minutes of the broadcast. When the show returned from commercial break, the atmosphere in the studio had completely changed. The audience sat in uncomfortable silence. Colbert was alone at his desk, his face flushed and his usual confident demeanor noticeably shaken. The empty guest chair loomed beside him like a silent accusation. We'll be right back with more of The Late Show, Colbert announced stiffly, before another commercial break began, much earlier than scheduled. But what the television audience didn't see was what happened during those critical moments when the cameras stopped rolling. As security approached Reynolds, the actor raised his hands in a calming gesture. I'm leaving peacefully, Reynolds said to the guards. There's no need for this. The show's executive producer rushed onto the stage, his headset askew. Ryan, please, can we talk about this? This isn't what we discussed in pre-production. Colbert stood behind his desk, straightening papers that didn't need straightening, avoiding eye contact with everyone. I agreed to come on this show to talk about my movie and have a good time with the audience, Reynolds said, his voice steady but firm. Not to be ambushed and insulted. The audience members looked at each other in confusion. Some had their phones out, recording everything, despite the no recording signs posted throughout the studio. Stephen, what was that? The producer turned to Colbert, not bothering to hide his frustration. Colbert shrugged, but the gesture lacked conviction. Just trying to spice things up. Ratings have been slipping. By attacking one of the most liked celebrities in Hollywood? The producer hissed. This isn't what we rehearsed. Reynolds, still standing near the exit, shook his head. Look, I don't know what's going on here, but I don't appreciate being used as a punching bag for ratings. I've always respected this show and you as a host, Stephen. Oh, please, Colbert muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Your whole nice guy act is just that. An act. Everyone in Hollywood knows it." The audience gasped. A woman in the front row stood up, pointing her finger at Colbert. "That's not true. Ryan Reynolds is known for being one of the kindest celebrities." Security seemed unsure who they should be escorting out now. Reynolds, who was calmly trying to leave, or the increasingly hostile host who was causing the disturbance. "Sir, we need to get back on air soon," a crew member whispered urgently. To the producer. The producer nodded, then turned to Reynolds. "Ryan, I sincerely apologize. This is not how we treat guests on this show. Would you reconsider finishing the interview? I promise this won't happen again." Reynolds looked around at the bewildered audience, the anxious crew, and finally at Colbert, who was now slumped in his chair, looking less like a confident talk show host, and more like someone who had made a terrible mistake. "I think it's best if I leave," Reynolds said quietly. "For everyone's sake." As Reynolds turned to go, a young production assistant ran up to him. "Mr. Reynolds, I just want to say I'm so sorry. I've worked here for 3 years and I've never seen anything like this." Reynolds smiled kindly at her. "It's not your fault. These things happen in live television." Meanwhile, viewers at home were taking to Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, speculating wildly about what was happening. Colbert-Reynolds showdown was already trending nationally. Video clips of the uncomfortable exchange before the commercial break were being shared thousands of times per minute. Did Colbert just self-destruct his career? One viral tweet read, "Ryan Reynolds showing class while being attacked for no reason," another commented. Back in the studio, chaos continued to unfold. The audience had begun talking among themselves, many standing up, some even heading for the exits in solidarity with Reynolds. "Everyone, please remain seated," a staff member called out. "We will resume filming shortly." But the damage was done. The carefully orchestrated world of late-night television had cracked open, revealing the messy reality behind the polished facade. In his dressing room, Reynolds spoke briefly with his publicist on the phone. "No, don't make any statements yet," he said. "Let's see how they handle it first." There was a knock at the door. Reynolds opened it to find Colbert standing there, his tie loosened, looking uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Can I come in?" Colbert asked. Reynolds stepped aside, allowing the host to enter. The two men stood facing each other in silence for a moment. "What was that about, Stephen?" Reynolds finally asked. "If I did something to upset you, we could have talked about it off camera." Colbert ran a hand through his hair. "It's not you. It's complicated. Try me," Reynolds said, crossing his arms. "The network has been pressuring me to be more controversial," Colbert admitted. "Our ratings have been slipping. They want viral moments, clips that get shared. They said I'm becoming irrelevant, predictable." Reynolds nodded slowly. "So you decided to blindside me to save your show?" "It was supposed to be a bit," Colbert said weakly. "You were supposed to play along, fire back with your usual wit. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "A bit?" Reynolds repeated incredulously. "You brought my wife into it. You insulted my work, my businesses. Where exactly was the punchline?" Colbert had no answer for that. He looked down at his shoes, the confident television personality completely gone. "I messed up," he said finally. "Badly. And now it's all going to be out there." Outside, they could hear the commotion continuing. The audience was chanting now, "Bring back Ryan! Bring back Ryan!" Reynolds glanced at the door. "Sounds like you've got a situation to deal with." "The show's probably over for tonight," Colbert said. "Maybe for good." "Don't be dramatic," Reynolds replied. "This isn't my first media circus. It'll blow over." "Will you accept my apology?" Colbert asked, extending his hand. Reynolds looked at the offered hand for a long moment. The chanting from the audience grew louder. Social media notifications were blowing up both their phones. In dressing rooms down the hall, Other scheduled guests for the evening were hurriedly being informed that their appearances would need to be rescheduled. The world of late-night television hung in the balance as Reynolds considered his response. Whatever happened next would not just affect these two men, but potentially reshape the landscape of celebrity interviews forever. Reynolds looked at Colbert's extended hand and finally took it, giving it a firm shake. "I accept your apology," Reynolds said. "But this isn't just about me, it's about respect." Colbert nodded, relief washing over his face. "You're right. I crossed a line." "Several lines," Reynolds corrected him. "And now we have a mess to clean up." The producer knocked frantically on the door. "Stephen, the audience is getting restless. We need to do something." Reynolds and Colbert exchanged looks. It was Reynolds who spoke first. "What if we go back out there together?" he suggested. "Talk about what just happened honestly." "You'd do that?" Colbert asked, surprised. "After what I just put you through?" "I think it might be the only way to save your show," Reynolds replied. "And honestly, it might make for better television than whatever you had planned." The producer's eyes widened. "That could work. Real, unscripted television. But are you sure?" Reynolds nodded. "On one condition. No more personal attacks. We talk like adults." "Deal," Colbert agreed immediately. 10 minutes later, the show's theme music played again as cameras rolled. The audience, which had been on the verge of walking out, fell silent as both Colbert and Reynolds walked onto the stage together. They took their seats, the tension in the studio thick enough to cut with a knife. "Welcome back to The Late Show," Colbert said, his voice lacking its usual energy. "As you may have noticed, we had a situation earlier." The audience murmured, in agreement. "I want to apologize to all of you," Colbert continued, "and especially to my guest, Ryan Reynolds. What happened before the break was unprofessional and unfair." Reynolds nodded, his expression serious but not angry. "Thank you for that, Stephen. And thank you for being willing to address this directly instead of sweeping it under the rug." "I think I owe everyone an explanation," Colbert said, loosening his tie further. "The truth is, I've been feeling the pressure lately. Ratings, relevance, competition with other shows, and social media. I made the terrible decision to try to create a viral moment at Ryan's expense." "Television is changing," Reynolds acknowledged, "but ambushing guests isn't the answer." A woman in the audience called out, "We come for fun, not for fights." Colbert winced. "You're absolutely right, and I lost sight of that." "Look," Reynolds leaned forward in his chair, addressing both Colbert and the audience. "We all make mistakes. What matters is how we handle them afterward." "So why did you come back out?" Colbert asked. "You could have just left." "Because running away doesn't solve anything," Reynolds replied. "And honestly, I think there's a lesson here for everyone about respect and how we treat each other, even in the entertainment business." The audience applauded, the mood in the studio beginning to shift. "Plus," Reynolds added with a hint of his trademark humor, "my movie really does come out next Friday, and I still need to promote it." That broke the tension. Laughter rippled through the crowd. "In that case," Colbert smiled, looking more like himself again, "tell us about Deadline Dash, and I promise to actually listen this time." For the next 15 minutes, the two men had a genuine conversation. Reynolds talked about his movie, but they also discussed the pressures of fame, the changing media landscape, and the importance of treating people with dignity. It wasn't the usual late-night banter. It was something more authentic. Backstage, network executives watched in amazement as social media exploded, not with clips of the earlier confrontation, but with praise for the honest conversation that followed. "This is remarkable," one executive whispered. "They're getting more engagement than we've had in years." As the segment came to a close, Colbert turned to face the camera directly. "I want to thank Ryan Reynolds not just for coming on our show tonight, but for showing me what real professionalism looks like," he said sincerely. And I want to promise our audience that The Late Show will always strive to entertain with integrity." The audience gave them both a standing ovation as the show wrapped up. As the cameras stopped rolling, Reynolds and Colbert stood and shook hands once more. "Thank you," Colbert said quietly. "You saved my show tonight." "Maybe we both learned something," Reynolds replied. The aftermath of the Reynolds-Colbert incident, as it became known, reverberated throughout the entertainment industry. Clips of both the confrontation and the reconciliation broke viewing records online. The next morning, Reynolds appeared on Good Morning America, where the hosts eagerly asked him about what had happened. "It was a difficult moment," Reynolds admitted, "but I think something good came out of it. Stephen and I had a real conversation, not just the usual promotional fluff." When asked if he harbored any ill will toward Colbert, Reynolds shook his head. "We've already talked privately. He made a mistake. He owned it. And we're moving forward." The incident sparked a wider discussion about the nature of talk shows and celebrity interviews. Think pieces appeared in major publications with titles like "The End of Gotcha TV" and "Why Reynolds-Colbert Could Change Talk Shows Forever." A week later, as Deadline Dash opened at the top of the box office, Reynolds received a delivery at his home. It was a case of aviation gin with a note attached. "To new beginnings. Thanks for the second chance. Stephen." Colbert's show experienced a ratings surge in the weeks that followed, not because he had become more controversial, but because viewers appreciated the more authentic approach he now took with guests. The network executives who had pushed for more conflict were reassigned. 6 months later, Reynolds returned to The Late Show. This time there were no ambushes, no personal attacks. Instead, viewers witnessed something rare in late-night television: a thoughtful, funny, respectful conversation between equals. As Reynolds left the studio after that successful appearance, a young fan stopped him for an autograph. "I saw what happened last time you were here," the fan said. "The way you handled it was amazing." Reynolds smiled as he signed the movie poster. "Sometimes the best moments come from the worst situations." "Are you and Mr. Colbert really friends now?" the fan asked. Reynolds considered the question. "I think we understand each other better now. And in this business, that's pretty valuable." As Reynolds walked to his waiting car, his phone buzzed with a text from Colbert. "Great show tonight. Drink soon?" Reynolds typed back, "Only if you promise not to critique my acting." "Deal," came the immediate reply, followed by a laughing emoji. The Reynolds-Colbert incident had indeed changed late-night television, not by making it more controversial, but by reminding everyone that behind the cameras, the jokes, and the celebrity personas, there were real people worthy of respect. It had shown that authentic moments, even difficult ones, resonated more with audiences than manufactured drama ever could. And as viewers would discover in the years that followed, it had also formed the foundation of an unlikely friendship between two of entertainment's biggest names, proof that sometimes the most compelling stories happen when the script gets thrown away.